Welcome to West Country Wanderings and a welcome to another one of my railway series. Today we're in the county of Wiltshire, not a county I've visited that often here on West Country Wanderings. Hope to put that right, featuring some more content here in the county, and I'll tell you more about that. Got some exciting things coming up here in the county of Wiltshire. I'm here in the beautiful Cotswold market town of Malmesbury. Behind me lies the River Avon. Now, we're not doing an Avon walk, we're actually going to be looking at the former GWR branch line which once served this lovely market town here. I'm going to start off exploring how the railway came into the town, the route that it took. In fact, it actually went through a tunnel. See if there's any remains of that at all. We'll have a look at that because I know it's near the Abbey Gardens. And then once we've found where the station site originally was, and I've no idea what is there, what we're going to see today, because I've only going on both the current OS maps and ones from the 19th century, we're going to trace it back because it actually joined two separate parts of the GWR main line. Initially it joined the main line that goes from Swindon to Chippenham, and later in the 20th century, when the South Wales main line direct route, sometimes known as the Badminton line, opened, the branch was truncated and it then joined the main line there. And we'll see if we can see or get as close as we can, bearing in mind obviously rights of way and that sort of thing, to where it joined that route. And I'll tell you a bit more about the history, the complicated history of how this line came into being and its sad decline. So why not join me on West Country Wanderings for another railway series uncovering the secrets and history of the Malmesbury branch line. The River Avon that runs through Malmesbury isn't the River Avon that rises in Leicestershire, goes through Shakespeare, Stratford and ends up at Tewkesbury in Gloucestershire. This is a different name, it's Wiltshire Avon. In fact, there's tributaries of it that channel around, completely encircling the town almost, and various channels over the years have been opened up to provide water power for the mills. So it's around this spot here that the railway entered the town, and it went on a route where those cottages were running parallel to that tributary of the River Avon. This has been completely re-landscaped here. There is a new road viaduct, I think it's the A420. I'll check that and put it in. It just goes on a huge bit flyover, so that obviously wasn't there when the railway was here either. And that's kind of the location. I'll just go and see what we can see up here, because this isn't the station yard that was. We're going to come on to that later. What I intend to do is follow the river along there for a bit in the direction of Cowbridge, because that footpath runs parallel, according to the OS map, to where the railway used to be. Then I'm going to retrace our steps and then see where the railway station and the goods yard was once in this town. So there's nothing to see there, it's private property, and that there is Malmesbury Garden Centre, and it's completely been re-landscaped and re-levelled, so you can't work out the route at this point. Anyway, we'll keep trying. Going underneath the 420 now, the viaduct. Just adjusted eye level, sorry about this. Doing it very, very bright sunny day, which means the difference between shadow and bright sunlight is a lot, so just adjusting the level so it doesn't burn out. So it's around this area that the railway once ran. Now I'm just wondering if this track that I'm going on was the former rail bed. Anyway, we're just going to quick go have a look. Beautiful day here and beautiful river meadows either side of me once we're away from the noise of that busy road. The railway fence runs along by my left, that's your right, and I think now I'm currently walking actually on the bed of the former railway running out of Malmesbury. But as I say, we're going to retrace our steps and see where it went to and where that goods yard and station was in the town here. And then I'm going to go to about 5 or 6 different points where, according to OS maps and public rights of way, we should be able to see where the railway line once ran, and hopefully to see what we can see of the former connection to it to the GWR main lines. Yes, definitely some railwayana here in terms of fences. See that wooden sleeper here, and more definite railway posts here. Now the bed that I've just been walking on, it seems to be an artificial level, and I'm wondering if that was because when they built the viaduct they probably used some subsoil and that type of things to excavate to build the main road viaduct there, and so this might be on a slightly different alignment to the original track bed, but just up here it seems to level off, and I think that would be a good indication of what it used to look like, or the landscape, when the railway line once ran here and those GWR pannier tanks, you have to imagine that, were coming through here. Now I don't know, I haven't edited this video yet as I'm recording it obviously, so if I can find any old photographs of Malmesbury station and the trains that once run on this, I'll insert that. I can't make any promises. But yeah, this is looking much more like it now, because it looks like we've got a bit of an embankment as well, so we're going to have a look at that, and then as I say we'll retrace our steps before I jump in my car and go off to some other locations to see what we can see. Now this is quite an exciting find here. This looks like, well, definitely not looks like, definitely an abutment of a former railway bridge, so that confirms yet again with the fence, I suppose, and the geography of it, that this is where the branch line went across over here. And I think when they built, I don't think the sewage work, it looks newish, well I say newish, probably past 30-40 years or so, that would have been built after the railway closed. They probably wanted access vehicles for the sewage works, and then they probably blew the bridge up, and sadly that's all that remains of this bridge here in Malmesbury, carrying the former GWR branch line. And as you can see it all there, but beautiful brickwork there, as you can see all the way down to here, and there's the embankment I was walking along earlier on. In fact, the footpath does continue along the former track bank. We'll have a quick look at that, and then we'll head back into Malmesbury. Now we have actually got ballast on the ground here, but I'm pretty certain that's not the original ballast that was once here when the railway ran through it. It has been put down to firmen up the footpath and make it suitable for cyclists as well, because it's also a cyclist route here. But yeah, so our railway continued through here, and as I say, I know it diverges off a bit and then there won't be much else to see, but yeah, it's very clear at this point that it was the former railway heading to the beautiful Cotswold town of Malmesbury. So that's our former branch line heading down there to both GWR main lines. More about that later in the video, so we'll catch up with it again. But yeah, there's nothing too exciting to see here apart from that's the route, because the fence post there obviously been completely replaced when this was converted into a cycle track. So while we're walking back to the heart of the town here in Malmesbury, just drop in some facts now about the line. The line length, it was 6.5 miles. There was just one intermediate station, and that was at Somerford, though that was actually close to the village of Great Somerford, and I believe it changed its name to Great Somerford after being called Somerford because there was another Somerford station, what was called Great Somerford, on the main GWR line. It'll make sense as we get there, don't worry. The line actually opened as an independent line, but with a great deal of help with the GWR in 1877. In fact, there was a company before that, I'll tell you about that later, which tried to open a line here in the 1850s, but they were thwarted from authority by the GWR. It's quite a complicated but a very interesting story if you're interested in railway history like me. And it was only ever lightly used. I think you had about just four trains a day. I think there was one train that ran right through to Swindon, which is obviously useful for connections and people getting to the major towns for shopping. But it obviously sadly closed. Later on I'll talk about that as well, because it wasn't anything to do with Dr. Beeching. So I'm back in the town again now, and just got some really exciting bits to show you now. This is where things get really, really interesting as the branch line makes its way into the heart of the town. Now, just to explain, for most of its journey, when it left the original main line at Dauntsey Lock, more about that later in the video, it travels along fairly flattish terrain, so the engineering of the line wasn't too difficult at all. But when it got into Malmesbury, things became very, very difficult because of the gradients and also the rivers, well rather one river but with the tributaries of it. We're just going to have a look at that now. There are two sections of, or tributaries of the River Avon at this point in Malmesbury, and you can see here another bridge, a much more substantial one. There we go, all the way up there, and that was our railway going across here. There isn't much left of it the other side, but there is something very exciting I need to show you just beyond that there. So yeah, so our railway's coming in here, and I don't know if you can make it out. There's any remains of another bridge down here. We're going to have a look together. So you can see some odd bits. In fact, this looks like a wooden sleeper here, propped up against a rail, next against this tree. One formal sleeper there. One rail there. In fact, up here, looks like you can get access up onto the former track, the line. So we'll go and have a look at that now. Very difficult to see from this point, but the other tributary of the Avon is just down here. I'm standing on the track bed, formal track bed. It's really exciting to be able to do this. For a lot of times you go and explore old railway lines and you've got fences, they're in private property, you can't get to see very much. But this is actually more here in the town, the heart of the town, than actually I thought I'd be able to see. But here, you can see, I don't know if you can see that there. It looks like it remains of a wooden sleeper, and I'm afraid it's covered in vegetation, but there are abutments of another bridge which would have carried this branch line over the second tributary of the River Avon at this point, and across her. And of course this has to be on an embankment for two reasons. One, because of the height of that bridge to get it across there, and two, because again this area floods the river meadows here in Malmesbury. And there's the first abutment I showed you just a couple of minutes ago. Just make out some blue bricks. Here we go. There we go. Very definite railway there. And it's what goes the other side of that tree, which I'll show you next because it's pretty exciting. And so yeah, that's the really interesting one to show you. So after our, just summarise now, there's the abutments of our bridge, went across this track and the tributary. You can see it then levels off after that tree, and then it heads through to that long bridge there. So that is the entrance to our tunnel, which goes through like a clump of land, high piece of land. And the other portal of that is near the Abbey Gardens in Malmesbury, probably one of the most famous things aside from the Abbey that Malmesbury is famous for. And we'll see if we can see that. We're going to walk along through the river meadows here because there's no right of way across directly to it. See if I can get a shot of it with a telephoto lens. And we're going to make our way to Connie Grieve, looks like a recreation ground and park, and see what we can see there, and then make our way along to the former goods yard here in Malmesbury. The other thing to say about that entrance there, it looks like there is light beyond it, so I think it has been kind of mucked around with. So you've got the original stone entrance there. I'm not sure part of the front part of the tunnel has been demolished, but when I had a tour of the Abbey grounds many years ago, and I'll mention that again in a minute, I seem to remember the entrance on the, or the exit if you like, on the other side of that, say that lump of land, and there is land where there is a bit of a steepness above the tributaries around the River Avon. We're on a delightful section by the River Avon again here. This is nothing to do with railway, it's just that it's a beautiful part of Malmesbury. In fact, all of Malmesbury is beautiful, but yeah, there's the river going underneath the bridge, and we're going to cross over the road, I believe now. I've got to check my OS map to see where we can make out the railway once more in this town. Behind me is Holloway Bridge, and so crossing over the Avon, we're just going to make our way slightly to the north and then kind of turn left where we'll pick up the former railway track once more. So we've climbed up again now, away from the road, the bridge in the River Avon, and that direction, that way over there, to my left, your right, yeah, you're right, my left, is Congreve Mead. Now I think that's got connections to Malmesbury Abbey. It doesn't look like it has been built on, but it is still private, so I'm not sure who owns that. We're making our way this way where there's a playing field, picnic area, fire station, and hopefully maybe something we can see at the former railway station. I've just come down from the cricket club, and this is Conygreave, C-O-N-Y-G-R-E, Gree, not Grieve, I keep saying Gree Nature Reserve, and it's administered by the Malmesbury Rivers Valleys Trust, I believe. It's not marked as a public right of way on the map, so I didn't even know it was here, just because it didn't show us access. Now, before I continue the little section where the station was, I thought I'm going to walk back to where it's the Abbey Gardens, the other side of the river, part of the Abbey Gardens, and we're not going into the town, the centre of that is, to see if we can see the other end of that tunnel from there, because I think what I'm walking on now is the former track bed again, old friend, but I'm not 100% certain, so I'm going to continue along that, so don't take my word for it just yet. So we're going to see what we can see along here through this beautiful nature reserve, and I did say I didn't realise this part had public access. Well, it's, as I say, it's by kind permission of the MRVT. I think that's right. I put it in below. Amazing to think we're actually in a town here. I still can't get my head behind that. Just at the end of the track here is the main Malmesbury. I don't know whether it's Malmesbury Comprehensive or what the name of the school is, but it's quite a big school. That's just down there, so obviously I couldn't film in that area. And just at the top of the bank, just behind the trees, is the town centre. But here, you can hear a little bit of traffic, but certainly hear far more birds than traffic, which is always good, and butterflies around as well. And I just saw a slow worm. I'll insert a clip of that now as well, but turn away now if you don't like slow worms. Now this is an exceptionally beautiful part of Conygreave, because we're now following the River Avon, and we have the famous Abbey Gardens. And just as I say, I was going to tell you more about that. The owners of the Abbey Gardens sold it a few years ago now, and I wasn't aware of that, and I watched another YouTuber, and I can't remember, sorry, I do apologise, I can't remember who it was, and they mentioned about it, but they said it was in a reasonable state of condition considering there was no owner, and I'm not sure if somebody has bought it. The latest position is on that, but it's just over there. My left, your right, and say here is the River Avon, and we'll be crossing over again where the railway track went, but yeah, beautiful spot here. Yes, I think that's the gardens there. I seem to remember coming down to these steps, just show you that. And that there is a bonus I wasn't expecting. The new owner of the Abbey Gardens has put in some railway track, and it follows the original course of the railway here in Malmesbury. That wasn't down in my plans. Oh, that is fabulous to see. See if I can get a better angle there, just further around the footpath for you. It's called, I think it says King Athelstan. Lovely. Yeah, sorry, Athelstan King. And after it come out the tunnel, which we saw earlier in the video, the entrance to it, the exit to it is to the left of the screen. It then went on a short bridge across the River Avon again here, continue its journey down into the station. Wow, that is so cool. There must be some kind of sensors when you walk up to it a bit closer. It sets something off so you get the sound effects and the effect of the smoke coming out the chimney. I can't quite believe that. That is tremendous here in Malmesbury. Whoever's done that, well done, brilliant job. And now if we just pan the camera around to the left, you can actually make out the portal. It's a little bit difficult to see because of the tree growth. Perhaps we came back in winter to see, but it is just there. So it's dead now, dead centre of the picture. So you've got the loco on the right, and right in the heart of the picture between those trees is the portal of the tunnel. But sorry, I can't get a closer shot of that for you because of the growth there, and unfortunately the Abbey Gardens are no longer open to the public. But I think the loco makes up for it. While I just pan you there, I'm just going to read what it says on the sign here. You're standing on the old Malmesbury railway line. Below you is the brick foundation where the track crossed the river before entering the tunnel. And I won't read the rest because I've already said that to you. The station, all the railway buildings used to stand behind you, so we're just going to have a look at that there, towards the Gloucester Road. The only building to have survived is the engine house, now used as a tyre depot, so we're just going to have a look at that. When a train left Malmesbury station, it passed through the 96-metre long tunnel under Holloway Hill towards Great Somerford. On emerging from the tunnel, the line crossed 2 further bridges over the River Avon and then carried on through a deep cutting at Baskerville Hill. From there it continued on a raised embankment through Lee Fields towards Great Somerford and Dauntsey stations. And the 042 steam engine, which I'll just show you now, here, delightful picture, you can see in the picture was affectionately known to the local people as the Malmesbury Bunk. Today the tunnel is sealed off, but there are holes to allow colonies of bats free access to the routes. The engineer who built the railway was one Richard Ward, a former apprentice of Brunel. So yeah, that's a wonderful thing to see there with that loco and the information board. And at the top of the train now you can see, of course, is Malmesbury. Well, not of course, if you haven't been here before, that's Malmesbury Abbey. And we will explore that in a completely separate video because there is so much obviously to cover here. So behind me there is the former engine shed. I'll insert some photographs around about now. It's the only remaining building, sadly, here in Malmesbury. But it does say that where I'm standing now was the then station building. It was quite an extensive site because you also had a good shed and cattle pens, as well as the platform and the station building as well. It also tells you on the plaque, and I can't remember it, the number of the loco, diesel loco, that pulled the last train into Mulberry in 1962. And when I get home and do the editing, I'll put that in as a subtitle, and if I can find out the latest status, it's probably been scrapped, but you never know, it might be on a preserve line somewhere. I'll see if I can find that out and put that in below as well. Banks of the River Avon. I'm just going to end part 1 of the video, grab a piece of fruit, some water, get back to my car, and then we'll see what we can see of the rest of the branch line that headed down to Dauntsey Lock. I've just come through the delightful Cotswold village of Little Somerford, and we've come down to a lane which runs parallel to the South Wales Relief Line. Now this line was actually opened in 1903 as a direct line to South Wales from London and Paddington, which diverted away from the existing line to Bristol. More about that in a bit. When this line opened, or should I say after this line opened, the branch line, the Malmesbury Branch line, a little bit further on, ran underneath the South Wales main line after it was completed to make its way up with the main Chippenham to Swindon line, the existing line before this one was built straight through the Severn Tunnel onto Newport and Cardiff. And as I say, this one is also known as the Badminton line. But about 30 years after this line opened, as a cost-saving measure, to reduce the length of the Malmesbury Branch line and to reduce running costs, a new connection was put in to meet this main line just a bit further along this lane. Now I don't know what we can see along there. I'm going to have a bit of a drive and wander about, see if we can see any remains of the junction connected up to what was the more modern. Well, this one obviously is just 120 odd years old now, but it took about 30 years before it truncated, because it went to the one which lies further south. Anyway, we'll see what I can see. One other thing to note, earlier in the video I was walking along an embankment and I said the footpath went onto Cowbridge, and I said we meet up again there. Well, I drove my car to Cowbridge. First of all, parking there is very different. Cowbridge is literally just a road bridge over the River Avon, and it's also where our branch line crossed over the Avon there. All the land around it is private property, so you can't actually gain any access to see anything that remains of the railway. I did have a look in some of the hedgerows, see any railway fencing, that sort of thing, but alas, nothing, I'm afraid, there. Further along the lane where I did that last piece of camera, and I just managed to capture GWR train going extremely fast, probably 110 I expect, through to South Wales. So I walked up the lane, I've come across this farmer's field, a gate, and although I'm not allowed to enter there, first thing I see is an old railway sleeper used as a gate post here. I'll just show you that. There. And obviously here we have the electric pylons for the OLHE for the railway, the main railway. That's not the point of interest. What is of interest is there's a hedge, if you can make out where my finger is, and it runs diagonally across the field, and it's a line of railway fence posts, and that denotes the line of our Malmesbury branch. In fact, there's two tree shrubs in the centre there. There's probably around about now, the centre of the picture, and as I say, there's railway fence posts, and just beyond that is where our branch line would have run. In fact, there was a slight cutting there, and then it joined. Where you can see, I think there's some, like, I'm not sure that is some soil there, just lightly in the grass. And you've got this water trough just in front of the camera, and then another pile of soil just near to where that gantry mast is for the other pylons. And it was just slightly beyond that the branch line joined the South Wales main line. I'm now in the village of Great Somerford, and I'm standing on the former railway bed once more. So now, just to remind you, this is the section that closed after that connection was made to the new relief line. So this section was closed from the 1930s onwards, and that down there continues down to Dauntsey Lock, which is where we're going to be heading towards the end of the video here on my channel today on West Country Wanderings. It crosses over the road here, so I'm on a raised embankment. Here is the road, just show you the layout so you can see. We've got the river over here in the Somerfield Showground as well. But our railway track went across, I think it went, I'm just trying to work out this side here. So I think this building, this cottage now, would have been the former, probably this former station master's house. So if I can get a shot of that there for you. Just adjust the lighting levels as well. Obviously you have to be careful because of people's privacy. So yeah, the building behind me, I think that's the former station master's house at the station at Somerfield. I keep wanting to say Somerford, here in the village of Great Somerford. So yeah, that's it, does say on the sign that's the old station house, and I think I do know our railway then continued down in that direction there. And we have our friend the River Avon just over in this direction too. Now, a place called Dauntsey Lock, I'm going to actually go and show you the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal in a bit, more about that, and I also want to tell you the rest of the story about the history of this railway line. Really difficult place because it seems to be quite a busy road, but apparently it's closed after Dauntsey Lock, but I don't know where everybody's going to, I have no idea, they're obviously ignoring the signs. This is Wootton Bassett Road overbridge. I've just inserted a clip of a train flying through, so it would have been going down Swindon to Chippenham. And where you saw that train coming through is where our line would have joined from Malmesbury. So I just inserted some clips there of the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal, the Wilts and Berks. This is the Peterborough Arms here in Dauntsey Lock, and beside the building there, the Wilts and Berks Canal Trust have set up some porta cabins, so they're obviously using it as a base to do restoration work into this lock here. Now, if you do come here to visit in Dauntsey Lock, please bear in mind it is all private apart from the public highway that crosses over the canal. You can't get access onto any of the towpaths because it is private property. I do need to point that out, but you can of course look down on it from the bridge if you see what I mean, from the clips that I've just inserted now. So this is our first taste of the wilts and barks, and I have to say it's not going to be our last, because in an upcoming video on my channel, again it's nothing to do with railways of course, I'm going to sit down and tell you a railway story in a minute. And before I do that, to mention that in a future video coming up soon, I'll be going down to the town of Royal Wootton Bassett, not far from here, where quite a considerable stretch of the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal, Wilts and Barts, has been restored. And we'll look at that as one of my canal series videos here in West Country Wanderings. Anyway, our story of the Malmesbury branch line continues. I'll just grab a seat, pull up a chair, get my tripod out, and I do apologise for those. I'll find somewhere quieter and tell you all about it. So I've decided to come back to this lovely town of Malmesbury in Wiltshire to tell the early part of the story. And there was a company called the Wiltshire and Gloucestershire Railway Company. Very little has heard about this company. It was founded in the 1850s with the prospect of joining this town here in the southern part of the Cotswolds in Wiltshire, North Wiltshire in fact, with the rest of the world, with the railway mania of course, because for trade it was an important market town. Although it's a mainly rural area, they didn't miss out on the action, so the company was founded. Now the original plan, they had a quite ambitious original plan, was to link it up with the towns of Stroud, Nailsworth, through to Malmesbury and on to a place called Christian Mulford, which is a few miles south of here. And by doing so, they would have linked up two existing railways, the Golden Valley line that runs between Swindon and Gloucester, and the existing line between Swindon and Chippenham, and cutting across and joining many towns too. But there was a fatal flaw in their plan, and that was the fact that the Midland Railway already had an existing interest. They had their branch line, which ran from the town of Stonehouse through to the town of Nailsworth, and they were not at all happy about this. Now later on they decided to work with the GWR, and initially things were going okay. Now at this point I need to explain the different gauges. The GWR ran a different gauge at this point in time to the current state of play, which is standard gauge. Now the Midland Railway ran on standard gauge, the GWR of course ran on broad gauge. So the then plan was to run it as a mixed gauge operation, obviously a bit more expensive, but by doing so it meant that where the line met up with the MR and then when it met up with the GWR, it didn't need to have transshipment points and changing engines and trains and all that type of nonsense. It could just run it through on one train or the other, depending on the starting point, whether it was on the GWR metals or the MR metals. Now it wasn't until the 1st of July 1865 that the first sod of soil was cut here in the town of Malmesbury, with the plan to link it up with the GWR, but the GWR was not playing ball. They weren't happy that this was going to steal part of their slice of the action, and they refused to cooperate with the Wiltshire and Gloucestershire Railway to such an extent that no more part of the railway was continued with. And later on in the 1870s the entire Wiltshire and Gloucestershire Railway was completely closed down and the company wound up. It wasn't until the 1870s that construction here began. And though it was run as the Malmesbury Railway Company, it was an independent operation. Much of the work and planning and construction was done under the auspices of the GWR, because obviously they had the experience and the money behind them to allow this railway to be built from the town of Malmesbury to connect it, as we have seen, at Dauntsey Lock, a few miles, well 6.5 miles to the southeast of here onto the Swindon and Chippenham main line. I'm currently in the beautiful meadows here which surround the River Avon, and I do hope to come back to Malmesbury and do a further tour, perhaps do a short bite initially, a photographic tour of this beautiful town here, and then perhaps go on one of the river walks which crisscross the town. A beautiful setting here in the southern part of the Cotswolds. I also hope you enjoyed today's little adventure looking at the former GWR branch line here at Malmesbury. If you would like me to look at a particular branch line in the West Country area that I cover, namely Devon, Cornwall, Wiltshire, Dorset, Somerset, Gloucestershire and Worcestershire and Herefordshire, then please drop a comment below. I'd also particularly be interested to hear from you if you have any memories of this former branch line. Until next time on West Country Wanderings, hope you can join me again. There'll be more content. I'll also be doing, as I mentioned, something on the Wiltshire and Berkshire canals. We saw a little bit of that today. Hope to look at a bit which has been restored in the town of Royal Wootton Bassett, not that far from here. Take care, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers, bye-bye.